Welcome back to Season 2 of Defence Talks, Securing UK Advantage, a podcast brought to you by the Council on Geostrategy in partnership with trade association ADS Group and sponsored by industry powerhouse BAE Systems. Here, we continue to explore the key questions shaping the defence, technological and national security agendas in the UK. Through discussion with our expert guests, we aim to unpack the most topical themes. And today's episode will explore the future of defence through the exciting agreement of emerging technologies. I'm Viktorija, Starych-Samuolienė, co-founder at the Council on Geostrategy. And as always, I'm here today with my co-host, Paul Mason.
Well, Victoria, it's great to be back again. And there's a lot going on, a lot to discuss. We've had the National Security Strategy, we've had the SDR, we have recently had the Defence Industrial Strategy, so that's the how we're going to transform UK defence. And the government is right now working on the Defence Investment Plan, which will finally tell us the what. What stays, what survives, what doesn't. And I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest moments in the defence transformation we're going through. Now, of course, it's an exciting time to be exploring the use of emerging technologies in UK defence. The SDR noted how they're, quotes, changing the character of warfare more profoundly than at any point in human history. AI, directed energy, quantum, engineering, biology, and I hope we'll explore what that actually is in a minute, are all mentioned. So today's discussion is going to be about how these technologies are developed over time, where does science fit in, and the opportunities and challenges while we're harnessing them. We'll also look at the development of emerging technologies and scientific progress in shaping what is possible in defence in the years ahead.
We've got two exciting guests with us, expert guests joining us this morning. And I'm absolutely delighted to present the first guest, and that's Dr. Paul Hollinshead, who is the Chief Executive at DSTL, having led complex large science and technology programs in the defence and civil sector for more than 20 years. Now, for those who do not know what DSTL means, it is the Ministry of Defence in Government Science and Technology Organisation, providing unique expertise and crucial insights in delivering innovative mission-winning solutions essential for maintaining UK warfighting readiness in an increasingly dangerous and complex world.
It's my pleasure now to introduce Finbar O'Keefe. Finbar O'Keefe is Head of Future Software for BAE Systems Maritime and Land, where he shapes the next generation of software-driven capabilities for the company's defence products. He focuses on command and control and has a technology specialism in software and AI, and has over 25 years of experience working on defence and security products, both for domestic and export customers. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen, perhaps let's begin with unpacking. What do these buzzwords, emerging and disruptive technologies, actually mean? What are those technologies? Paul?
So you've already given a list of quite a lot of them, though emerging is an interesting word because it's been around for quite a while now. Emerging and disruptive. Emerging means, for me, that basically we're now looking at how we develop them and apply them. And disruptive means that they may be technologies that will actually mean you have to change the way you fight and operate, or they might create new threats. So if we take something like autonomous vehicles, they can provide a cheap way of producing a mass effect, a mass attack effect. You have to think about, therefore, how you would use them, but also how you would counter them, because lots and lots of little drones are much harder to attack than one large platform. So for me, emerging technologies are those technologies that are emerging that could produce a threat or an opportunity, and basically disruptive technologies are the ones that could actually force us to change the way we fight or offer new opportunities. And you've already given a lot of the list, and the ones we're looking at: artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, quantum, direct energy weapons, etc., etc. I won't just repeat the list. And they are areas we are focused on to understand how we might better use them ourselves, or how we might counter them if they're used against us.
Wonderful. Finn?
Yeah, and I think there's one thing from an industry perspective that to add to that, and that's that disruptive technologies make us rethink the way we deliver and what we deliver. And if we don't allow that to happen, then as an industry we're failing. So we shouldn't be resistant to this sort of disruptive trends coming our way. We should be embracing them because they allow us to deliver better things faster and closer to what the customer requires.
And presumably, since we are in a threat situation with at least one major power and a systemic competition situation with the People's Republic of China, we're also hoping that we will be able to innovate faster than the threat and the competitor.
Yeah, and that comes about really from the point of view that to do that, what we've got to do is to take Britain and our allies' great inventiveness in technologies and try and pull through those ideas faster into systems that win. And the trick here, it's not about which technology, because there is no magic technology. It's that ability to pull those technologies together into an effective fighting system at speed. That's what will give you your advantage.
Can you give us an example of how such technologies are actually changing the way we already operate? And I mean, it's obviously going on across all 5 domains of armed conflict, but is there any one specific one where you're thinking this is just already disrupting, sort of like the internet, this changes everything?
Well, certainly, I think already let's talk about AI. I mean, lots of people have seen drones in the Ukraine, and there's no doubt more autonomous systems are being used as we speak now. And DSTL certainly helped develop drone boats, drone land platforms, a vast array of drone aircraft, which are being used not only in the Ukraine, but by our own forces. And they're being used to produce a mass or more cost-effective attack, or they're being used to improve surveillance, or they're being used to take people out of harm's way in tasks you don't need to do. So maybe you're trying to do surveillance in a very hazardous environment, much better to send a robot in there than a person. So they're already being used that way. AI is being used because the new sensors produce a proliferation of data that is very hard for humans to cope with. If you've got AI to help you sift all that data, you can more quickly get to the salient points and use that data you've got to make better decisions quickly, in a way you couldn't just with humans.
And it's about not letting the new technology add complexity. So they should be about reducing the complexity that our service people face. So the AI, I think, is something really close to my heart. We are in danger, or there is a risk that we provide something that doesn't make things easier, that instead makes the environment really impossible to deal with. So that kind of information overload gets worse. So we don't want an AI decision support tool to present every possible option. We want it to produce the best 3 options that a human can then say, okay, I understand that and I've got a time window in which I can make this decision. And if we can get to there, then we're bringing benefit rather than additional complexity.
So, Paul, you come from Whitehall, and Finn, you work in industry. And I'm very keen to hear more about how do you embrace and trial new technologies, and then what is the degree of coordination between the government and the industry?
So for me, it's a team sport, a partnership. We've always worked a lot with industry. So although DSTL does the work that needs to be done in government, I have over 2,200 industry partners as we speak in the UK. We also work with over 50 universities. And we've just been at DSEI, where we've been talking not only to all of our big prime partners, but we had a special morning just for the SMEs. So bottom line, what do we try to do? We try to work with our colleagues in industry and academia so they understand the kind of problems or challenges we're trying to address. We work with them to try and identify the technologies or solutions that might be out there. And then also, if you take an example like Dragonfire, which is a really good example of us all working together, we say, right, we've got different bits of technology, laser technology, optical technology. How do we bring that together into an effective demonstrator system, which we built together and then demonstrated, and test if it's going to be useful against uncrewed vehicles? And we did all that in operation, and we've proven the prototype at the Porton Down range, and now we're trying to look at how we then actually now field it to demonstrate it out in the field. And that example of me is our partnership. As far as I'm concerned, we operate as a system. We might have different roles in that system, but we can only actually mature the research, demonstrate it and scale it up by working closer together. And as far as I'm concerned, Chief Executive, working more close with industry and academia is a no-brainer.
And we've worked with, DSTL similarly. Throughout my career, I work largely in the maritime domain, so we work in Portsmouth a lot, and I will regularly across to the DSTL site. I've got colleagues I've worked with for decades in that environment, and there's always been a really fruitful conversation going on there. The other thing that would be really beneficial from an industry perspective is a more useful access to data. So, we're trying to build artificial intelligence solutions to complex problems. Really hard to get at data from the defence domain, real data out in the field. Being able to streamline that pipeline back to industry in a fair and equitable way, not favouring one party over another. It's a really tough challenge.
It is, and I think the balance to be struck in that one is also security as well, as you will know. It's that balance between the freedom of data flow and making sure it's secure.
So the Defence Industrial Strategy had one line about a proposal to form an alliance of universities that want to take part in national security directed scientific research, and I think that's knowing a little bit about where that's going. It raises the question: how are UK science and UK universities contributing to this very exciting time in defence? Because there is some trepidation in the higher education in the higher education sector as the geopolitical situation has got scratchier. It has dawned on people that the use to which this stuff will be put is ultimately, potentially warfare. So how are we going to sell this to the next generation of students and scientists?
So I think I've said part of that is for people to recognise and be educated the fact the strategic environment has changed. And the other part is that, to a certain extent, the clue's in the title. It's the Minister of Defence. And, I'm quite proud of the fact that what we're trying to do is to defend the nation and make sure people can continue with their way of life peacefully. That's it. But I think it's a matter of people understanding how the strategic environment has changed and getting our narrative right so that people recognise that they're actually working on things that are there to defend the nation, basically.
Have you noticed a change in that since? I mean, I feel like since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I've seen much more supportive views from universities. We see much more engagement from small and medium-sized enterprises. So I don't know. It feels to me like the public mood is very different around defence than maybe where it was 5-10 years ago.
I think the mood is changing, but I think there's still a case for making our case and educating the public if we want to be more on side, and I think that's what we need to do.
There are so many STEM graduates that each year graduate in this country. It's one of the highest numbers in the world. Secondly, also, our success has always relied on making sure that our technology, science and technological advantage offsets the mass of adversaries. And finally, we generate also the second largest number of Nobel Prize winners for science. So we have to be proud of it, but then the question is, how do we actually use it in a proper way?
Yeah. So I get back to working with the university is nothing new for DSTL. And remember, I've been in it and its predecessors for 39 years. We always have. We work with over 50-odd universities. We put tens of millions out there. We have got a hub with Newcastle University on AI, where we have got our own people working at the university, not the other way around. I think what I see when people are talking in the SDR about evolving what we do with universities, I see a mixture of making sure we've got the right partnerships with the people with the right skills to help. And also, do we want to extend and have a few more hubs in specific areas? So in other words, are there other areas like AI where we want to hub with the university? But my Chief Technology Officer, Professor Andy Bell, is leading on that and working on what our strategy is. But essentially, we've always worked with universities. We wish to continue to work with the right ones. And I think we would look at our current hub model and say, having had one successful hub on AI with Newcastle, what other hubs want we to develop going forward?
Well, perhaps now let's move into the nitty-gritty of these emerging and disruptive technologies. The first one we mentioned, I think it twice only so far, it's AI. And I'm very curious to learn more. What has the development of AI systems brought to defence and security to date? Both perspectives, please.
Yeah. Do you want to start or shall I start?
You go.
Okay, I'll go. Right. So from my point of view, what AI is already doing is it enhances, as I say, that analysis of data and makes it easier. So it improves target acquisition. It increases lethality, but actually people are missing its main benefit, which is as a productivity tool. So it optimises logistics, now we handle it. It optimises supply chains. And I think its main advantage, although people tend to worry a lot about kind of thinking machines and robots, is going to be in productivity. Our ability to do more, with the resources we've got, or more personal productivity. And so that's happening already. And I did go up to see a kind of like a lab run by AstraZeneca, who've invested a lot in AI and kind of autonomy, which makes them a lot more productive in the rate at which they produce new drugs, medicines, etc. And I think you're going to see that. So AI for me, absolutely, but I think one of the biggest game changers you're going to see in that is its ability to improve our productivity.
Yeah, I make the same distinction in the way we approach AI in BAE Systems, or certainly in BAE Systems Maritime and Land, and that's to view it in two parts. So there is AI that will land in defence products, and there's a whole host of capability enhancements that we can get to that. The other side, and actually a side that probably has less ethical concerns, less considerations, is our speed to market. And improving our speed to market through the use of large language models to automate workflows, through sort of optimization AI to optimize perhaps aerodynamic design. This is something that we've relied on experts with 50 years, 40 years of experience for many years, and now with a optimization tool, we can go through thousands of iterations of a design in minutes rather than years, and so this kind of speed to market in AI is really important to me. In the we've already touched it in the product domain. The sort of area that I'm most focused on is decision support. So we all, it's very easy to get captivated by the latest radars, potentially the latest weapons. But actually in warfare, the thing I hear most from our customers is making the right decisions as early as possible. That's what's going to keep people safe. And so actually providing AI decision support into our command and control systems, into the Royal Navy's combat management systems, that's where our value is. And as that's all software, it should be possible for us to bring that to market quite quickly, and without disrupting, the platform designs. So I think there's a massive benefit we can go after there.
What about quantum computing, quantum technology? It would be really good, I think, for our relatively expert audience, to get an overview of where UK is on quantum computing, and especially the mix between public and private. Where is it going on, and where are we likely to see the defence benefits?
So there's a lot going on in quantum. The government's invested a lot in what I call university research in it. There's lots of investors abroad. I went out to the American quantum program just last year. What we need to look at is particularly, I think, in my area, the defence applications of it, because I should draw from the basic technology that's out there, because that's where a lot of the money is. From defence aspects, I think to see the early things that you would do in the next five years or so would be around timing and navigation. So that's around better timing and be able to navigate in GPS-denied environments, which is very important because we rely on GPS. Sensors, the ability to actually see through things we can't see through at the moment, foliage, camouflage, maybe walls, that sort of things, really improve sensors to see threats that we can't see now. I think they're all in the next 5 years or so. Beyond that, I think you've got quantum computing, which obviously offers the ability to really compute at high speed, improve decision making, productivity, etc. And communication, where it offers the ability to really encrypt and ensure ultra secure communication, which is obviously very key in defence. They're all different areas. We've been supporting the national quantum technology since 2013. We've got various industrial projects and academic projects and PhD studentships we fund. And we have, in DSTL itself, got a first quantum computer that we are experimenting with. And we are running with the Royal Navy some initial experiments on navigation, alternative navigation with it. So lots going on, and we are certainly seeing it as something, but for me, I'm looking probably in the nearer term about it really improving our ability to navigate in jammed environments, better timing, and sensors that can see through things we can't now, but there'll be more that comes from it.
And in the private, there is a lot of quantum in the private sector, as you say, and the interesting thing there is, of course, with exceptions, the private sector still operates in a globalised environment. So potentially, every advance in quantum in the private sector is not necessarily a sovereign capability for the UK. How do we get our heads around that?
So we're approaching that, obviously in terms of the investment globally. Big tech is investing huge amounts of money in quantum, and I think from a BAE Systems perspective, we partner strategically with Microsoft. That's something that's been of great benefit to us over the last couple of years, and promises to be of benefit to us going forward. But that isn't to say there aren't challenges.
Exactly.
Bringing that kind of technology that's been invested in overseas into UK defence, there absolutely are. I firmly believe that unless we do that, we can't help but be left behind those advancements.
Maybe it's about leveraging that investment outside, and then the fact recognising we might need to do more to address specific defence and security aspects, or modify it in some way for our aspects. But what we don't want to do is duplicate that basic spend in understanding the technology and advancing it, where that can be led by the civil markets. We should be doing our bit where it makes sense.
Totally agree. On the substance of Paul's answer, though, he nailed it. For me, the early benefit that we'll see here is in quantum navigation, which is going to become really critical as soon as there's any kind of conflict hitting our Royal Navy fleet, our Air Force. That GPS denied environment is going to be very difficult to cope with, given our current ways of working. So yeah, quantum navigation, quantum sensing. My feeling is that that's probably a little further off, but we have teams certainly in our radar divisions that are actively looking at the possibilities there. Yeah.
Yeah. But I still think you could see both of them deployed in the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps as prototypes on vessels.
Yeah. At DSTL, there was a lot of focus on autonomous systems. So how do these autonomous systems change the way we fight, or will change the way we fight in the future?
So the way we change we fight is, if you like, the old battles of being kind of like large, small numbers of platforms versus large, small number of platforms. What autonomy gives you is a lot of lethal mass that's cheap. So you might have autonomous aircraft that might cost you like just a few tens of K that could then be in large swarms and quite lethal, and they're hard to counter. But they're also useful in keeping our own people away from harm's way and doing jobs where you don't need to use people. So I've said again, doing surveillance in dangerous areas. Think the advantage of sending your drones out first to take a look at an area. The enemy obviously starts shooting at them. Well, you know the enemy's there, but you've also got the pictures without sending a manned helicopter over the top. The helicopters can then come in behind, knowing where the stuff is. The drones could also soak up some of the attack or actually block some of the attack that's going in there. But I think basically you've also got, how do we have mass? Because if the enemy's getting mass from these things, we also need to invest. Because where you've only got a few platforms, you want mass to try and help. And I think for me, I see them as both, we've got to be able to counter them because they are a cheap way of providing a lethal threat to us, and that's what Dragonfire and directed weapons are about. We've got to use them ourselves because they're also a cost-effective way of us providing a capability. And we've got to think about where we use them because they'll keep our personnel from danger or in tasks that they don't need to do anymore. And like I say, an example we were doing last year was reconnaissance an environment that might have been contaminated with either mines or CB weapons. You could now put robots into that field and not risk lives. So I think we're already using them. And actually, I was in a trial last year with the Americans, the Australians, an AUKUS trial, where we were linking up autonomous vehicles to do surveillance, for example. And what we were doing is they were going out there, deciding their own search pattern, deciding what mix of land and air sensors they wanted to use, and they very effectively searched the area without anyone having to go in harm's way and fed back the information. So I think they're already there and being used, and I think they'll just get more ubiquitous as time goes by.
I think that's right. There is so I'm a computer scientist by trade. There is a thing in here that I maybe foresee as being a problem in the future. So as we increase the mass, and you imagine, say, 500 assets with largely controlled or in some way controlled tactically by artificial intelligence applications that are on those assets, the system effect of that is incredibly difficult to model. So what is the outcome of having these AIs ostensibly working together? That's a really hard thing to model, and we're doing some work with a small company called Inquiring Minds, who are working on the Trusted AI Bill of Materials program, and that for me feels like an underpinning technology. And in all of our push to the edge and the capability here, we've got to be really careful that we keep hold of the underpinning technology. So the Trusted AI Bill of Materials is about understanding what is where at all times and making sure, therefore, that system effect is a good one, is a positive one.
I think in a way we're running into the problem that Soviet economic planners had, is that they didn't have a computer big enough to model the system and literally could never solve that problem themselves. I mean, that science fiction and computer science fiction tells us that maybe quantum will, but it just leaves us asking the question of observability that all engineers have to deal with, and good luck with solving it. Which brings me to engineering biology. The engineering biology has been specified as early as the 2021 integrated review as a UK scientific priority. Why? And what is its application to defence?
Because I think people see that it could do many things. At the moment, it's not quite possible to see everything, but it's fielded as a transformative field. So sort of the things it could do, which in self-repairing materials, microbes that are engineered to detect explosives or chemical threats, forward deployed manufacturing, so be able to manufacture out in the field using this technology as opposed to do it back in the industry, to be able to manufacture out in the field where you are. Bio batteries, so new sorts of batteries, gel-like power sources, underwater adhesives for extreme environments. There's all sorts of things we're trying to do with it. At the moment, I think we recognise it as a transformative technology that can have many applications. The more obvious ones at the moment are kind of, again, in materials, sensors, energy, but there will be others. And so recognising it as the ability to transform, we are doing more on it. But a bit hard to predict at the moment exactly what's going to come out of it. But I would definitely suspect novel materials, improved sensors, perhaps improved batteries, and the ability to manufacture more out in the field or more cheaply are all things that could happen.
Yeah, and I think all of these threads that you've raised are interlinked, because our ability to move forward in this engineering biology space is going to be impacted by our understanding of AI and the introduction of quantum computing. So, that ability to model behaviours in this engineering biology space is going to be improved. And so we end up in that, the exponential, technology development. And I think it's impossible to foresee where that ends up.
And presumably there is a legitimate fear, and I've seen it raised by the Australian ASPE Institute in its survey of the People's Republic of China's capability in science, that the danger is they get ahead of us, and they get ahead of us in the exponentiality of the synthesis between the different disciplines. What can we realistically do to counter that?
So I think it gets back to the pace. So look, we're very clever as a nation. What we need to get better at is working together to pull this through at pace, but also it's interdisciplinary teams. As I've said earlier, this is not about one technology, it's about how you put them together to form a more effective defensive or lethal system, take your pick, but a more effective defence and security system. And so this for me means more multidisciplinary research to glue this together, more work on understanding what a good system looks like, and then working with colleagues in industry in particular to actually make sure we can build that system and field it. But I think it's a move away from perhaps building a platform or focusing on a magic technology at a time to we've got to be much better at understanding a range of technologies and how they can be combined to the effect we want.
We've so far focused on what is happening in the UK, but I guess the other question is, we talk a lot about the need to strengthen our partnerships, minilateral partnerships, multilateral partnerships, NATO, different formats, AUKUS, GCAP. How do we work together with key allies and partners to deliver what we want to achieve?
So we build on the existing relationships. There are many. So DSTL works with, as far as I can look at, every allied nation. I've got a diagram somewhere of all the people we work with, and there are various communities of science and research. But chances are, if there's some government-to-government defence or security research going on, DSTL is doing it with those nations. So we do that. I think in terms of improving it, sharing views on the problem set as well as the potential solutions is key. I think it's coming together in collaborations where we appreciate what each other can bring. So often what UK brings is not the complete solution, but we're at the table because we've got bits of it that we're really world class at. So again, recognising where you're world class and you can leverage that to get your allies to want to cooperate with you. Because who wants to cooperate with someone who's not good at anything? Not very many people. But if you can bring something to that table, that's important. So looking at where UK's got strengths, whether they're in government or industry, and how we leverage those strengths to be part of a partnership that will solve the problem. But we're doing a lot more in partnership, and indeed DSTL's strategy, when I changed it in 2022, has a focus on doing more internationally, because I recognise that both, we're not going to solve this problem without working internationally. Just can't happen.
Yeah, again, the industry perspective, or certainly the BAE Systems perspective on this, is that we are better placed now, I think, to work in partnership with global allies than we have been for years. So you guys have mentioned it already. GCAP is a massive multinational effort, and BAE Systems are, I see it every day, focused on that, laser-like focus on that program. But then, just recently we announced the Norway frigate program. Now that's again an opportunity to just improve, optimise our approach to naval shipbuilding, and the excitement in Scotstoun and Govan around that program is palpable in the business. So yeah, I think we are well placed. We have to pull on those those relationships, and we have to make the absolute best of those relationships.
Yeah. I think the other way to make them more effective is whether we can agree together as allies if there's a few priorities, and perhaps put more of our effort into those together. There's always a danger in technology. There's so much to do, you could spread yourself too thin. I think more discussion about where we'd really like to all focus effort on their particular projects or areas and come together on, which I am starting to look at with some of our allies. When I talk to them, I say, it's not about coming up with a longer list. It's about, we've got a list, is there anything missing from it? But what do we really want to get after together? But I think it's key to the future.
I suppose the industry challenge with all this, I'm thinking about a lot of people who listen to our podcast are SMEs in the defence sector and the security sector. And the thought emerges that we've been talking for the best part of half an hour about technologies where we have a hunch about where they might end up and how they might fit together on and in which domain they might work. SMEs have very, very little sightline into the future, even to the present, given the necessary security and intellectual property concerns inside defence industry, full stop. You had mentioned earlier, who owns the IP for something can be a real tricky thing. What can we say to our SME audience about what they can do to prepare themselves to take part in this pretty wild ride that you're explaining might be about to happen in the next 10 years?
So I can give you an example.
Yeah.
So recently in Portsmouth, we hosted a Codathon event. So we worked with Innovate UK. We pushed out a couple of challenges, counter UXV and solutions in counter UXV, and integrated air and missile defense solutions, innovative solutions in this domain. And we had 50 plus applications from SMEs and universities around the country. We down selected that, invited 14 of them to this event, this 2-day event, where they spent time with both BAE Systems, but DSTL were invited and attended. We had the Royal Navy there, and that, to me, that's how we help SMEs understand both the challenge and the environment that they're walking into, because they will, the SMEs will come to us and say, like we were saying earlier, we want the data. We need the data if we're gonna solve these problems, and we have to be very careful with what we do with the data. How do we manage that? So I think the only way to bring SMEs nearer to the enterprise is to go and bring them in and invite them in, because what we got out of those 2 days were really, really innovative, different solutions to problems, and that not something that BAE Systems have come up with, and so that putting the feelers out and using Innovate UK, using DSTL, using the bodies that exist to pull those people in, to me, is the key.
I agree, using existing bodies, and of course we'll soon have UKDI established, which will be doing a similar thing, issuing challenge.
Just explain what UKDI will do, because it's part of the defence reform that everyone is kind of getting their head around.
Well, it's still forming up, but the idea is that they will focus very much on accessing technologies out there that might make a difference in the next 2 to 5 years. And they will be, as they do now through DASA, issuing challenges, but they'll be looking to reach out both the defence and the civil sector to say, are there stuff out there, solutions, technologies, we should be actually taking account of and thinking about. And they will be looking in particular also at how we make better use of SMEs. From your point, DSTL had a special morning for SMEs at DSEI as well as an afternoon for primes. We had something called Supercharging Science a couple of years ago, where everyone could come and do two things: not only learn as best we could explain it at a lower classification what the problems were and what we wanted to do, but also a session in the afternoon about how to work with us, how to contract with us, how to put a business case into us. So we are trying our best to engage them. And just point out that out of the money DSTL gives to industry, about 22-23% has gone to SMEs direct. So we do try and encourage them, as well as funding our large partners.
There's generally a degree of risk aversion in Whitehall. Now, when the SDR was published, of course, a bold vision, a great strategic document, but the key question was, how do we now go about the implementation? How do we counter that degree of risk aversion that is quite common in Whitehall? I guess my question would be, in this context of developing these exciting, emerging and disruptive technologies, how do you counter that risk aversion?
I think you do it by a mixture of education and demonstration. So if you take some of the things like we're doing already, so again, a lot of these are developed with industry. We developed Storm Shroud at DSTL, which is electronic warfare drones that operate alongside fighter jets. We've demonstrated them to the user in the RAF. Ministers can see they work, so they get funded. Something like Dragonfire, as I said, some of the basic technologies were started many years ago, but now people have seen the prototype we made with industry working on the range. People are very excited, and ministers are going to put $1 billion into accelerating directed energy weapons, because you can either fire missiles that might cost £1 million at a 14K drone, which I don't think makes much sense, or you can use RF weapons and lasers, which cost 10p to £10 to fire to counter those drones. So people are starting to get it, but I think it's part of education and capturing their imaginations. This might solve your problem. Getting somebody to build a demonstrator, and once the services and ministers can see this demonstrator works. So we invited them down to see the trial at Porton Down along with industry, and they go, I can see that works. I can see that as burnt a hole in an uncrewed vehicle from 8 miles away or whatever else. Then you start to get the engagement. But I think it's how you kind of educate a non-technical audience and demonstrate the benefits to them if you want to get the money. And to do that, I need to work with industry as well.
Yeah, I think your question, if I may, is slightly unfair on Whitehall, because I mean I accept the premise that Whitehall is risk averse, but I think the enterprise is risk averse all the way out to the very edge. And what that risk aversion does is it doesn't just slow us down. So that's the prevailing effect. Slows us down. But what it means is that there's a capability gap at the edge. So a new threat comes along. It takes us 2 years to get something to that means that service person is actually in a weaker position for 2 years. So that the risk balance proposition needs to be better across that pipeline, from Whitehall to the edge. So why should our operator on a Type 45 take all the risk? Why shouldn't we apportion that risk across the pipeline? Some of that sits in Whitehall, some of it sits in industry and our ability to balance that risk. But we have to fix that as an enterprise.
So what's the recipe? How do you fix that?
Well,
so softly, and working together. So and bringing better contracting mechanisms to bear. So at the moment there's a program called Recode in the combat systems domain, which is being contracted under sort of relational contracting terms, which fundamentally means we're working way closer with the customer than we have done on previous iterations of that type of contract. So instead of it being throw requirements over the wall, it's get together, work out what's best for the next drop, and push that next drop out. And if we can do that more effectively across the whole enterprise, we will get to a better place where the risk is better balanced across that pipeline.
I agree. I think it's something got to change, probably about the whole culture. But I think from my point of view, it is about where does education help? So I say there's lots of analysis war games models. You can take people through those so they can say that if I could do this, can you see the benefit? I do think building prototypes together helps because, people can see it works.
Yeah, definitely.
I think then there's got to be something with industry about, perhaps being very clear this is something we want to do as soon as we really can so that people are prepared to invest their money into this because they have confidence it's going to go forward. And I think then it's the operator's confidence. If the operator is going to move from a very traditional, tried and trusted way of operating, they've got to be convinced this technology can work. But also, we've got to help them change the way they operate, because most of these technologies will only really give you an advantage if you change how you do things as well as the technology.
Yeah, and one thing you said earlier that really comes to the fore here is the ability to make decisions fast about switching off investments.
Absolutely.
So being able to say, well, we've tried that in the last 3 months. This is not a goer. This is not going to bring us value. Stop it, and don't regard that as a terrible thing.
No, that's a good thing.
So in industry, it's very easy to make investment cases, get some funding, and then when it doesn't work, be seen as a failure, and that's not necessarily right.
I mean, it's dawning on me now that the scale of the challenge, because thinking about what the first surface combatant commanding officer to put to sea with quantum navigation only and directed weapons only on the deck might be a very brave and risk friendly person.
Yep. maybe, but I think again before then we'll have done lots of trials to build that confidence. You know, but I think what you might find is probably more in the interim you get a mix before all this goes over. But I think the point is at the moment, having a limited magazine of expensive missiles when a drone attack comes in might mean you've got no missiles after the first attack. You know, that's not a good way to go either. So
a concluding question from me. Finn and Paul, what excites you most about emerging and disruptive technologies?
I think what excites me most, I think we've got a real opportunity to do things a lot better. By what I mean, to be able to counter some of the threats that come from the technology, to be able to do things more cost effectively through being more productive or finding new ways to do things. So drones could potentially be more cost effective. And therefore, what really excites me is my passion throughout my career has been to defend the nation. I think science is key to defence's transformation. It's key to our national security. So what excites me is the ability of these technologies to make us better defended, to make us more capable, and to be able to do that more cost effectively.
I agree with that. I think more for me, more close to home. Through my career, the thing I've enjoyed most of all is working with the Royal Navy. So the great attitude that you get from the Royal Navy at virtually every turn is brilliant. So I think if we can work more closely around the disruptive technologies, we'll just provide them with a capability that's infinitely better than that which they currently have. And as we go through the next 10 years, that's going to be, that's just a really exciting prospect.
Couldn't agree more. For me, if I know that we've done something together that makes our troops more effective but also safer, more of them come through and saves lives, what could be a better thing to go home and think you've achieved?
A fascinating and inspiring conversation indeed. And thank you so much, Paul and Finn, for joining us today. What excites me most about this conversation is that not only we discussed the emerging and disruptive technologies, but we also came up with a couple of solutions. How do we get where we want to be more effectively and quickly?
And with that, we'll say goodbye.
And thank you so much for listening to Defence Talks, Securing UK Advantage, brought to you by the Council on Geostrategy in partnership with ADS Group and sponsored by BAE Systems.